Nia Carter didn't hit the mat hard, but the laughter hit harder. Apex Jiu-Jitsu Academy, polished floors gleaming under fluorescent lights, had just fallen silent seconds before. Instructor Blake Thompson's foot swept clean under her base during a demonstration, and now she was flat on her back. Her gi flared open at the hip. He stood over her like he'd conquered something. "Women like you," he said, loud enough to carry. "You belong in a spin studio, not on my mats." His black belt was tied sharp, not a crease out of place. His voice oozed performance. A few students chuckled, others didn't bother hiding their phones. Someone whispered, "Damn." Nia rose calmly, knees first, no panic in her face, no protest. Just steady breath and sharp eyes. The room wanted a reaction. She gave them posture instead. As she adjusted her belt, a thin chain slipped free from under her GI, military dog tags clinking softly against her chest. Blake's smirk widened. "Know your limits," he said. But they didn't know her, not yet. Nia didn't flinch, not because it didn't sting, but because she'd learned long ago. Dignity doesn't need applause. You carry it for yourself, quietly, until someone finally notices. She'd chosen Dorchester for a reason. No skyline views, no artisan cafes, just tight brick walk-ups, cracked sidewalks, and neighbors who kept to themselves. Her third-floor apartment above the laundromat on Savhill Avenue didn't pretend to be more than it was. 2 rooms, creaky floorboards, and a busted radiator that wheezed all winter. It was the kind of place no one asked questions in. That suited Nia just fine. She liked mornings, brewed strong coffee in a dented percolator, sat by the window and watched the city wake up. School buses, city workers, commuters marching toward the orange line. Her ritual was silent, steady, like breathing. The walls held her history in pieces, a photo of her father in his Marine blues, a shelf of anatomy textbooks, medical journals, and combat history, a corner shadow box with 2 sets of dog tags, his and hers. Most days she wore them tucked under her shirt, not for show, for anchor. After coffee, she pulled on scrubs and caught the 28 to Jamaica plane, where she worked as a physical therapist at the Veterans Rehab Center. Her sessions were deliberate, grounded. Patients didn't always talk, but they always listened to her. Somehow she understood without asking. They didn't know she had 8 years of service behind her, or that she'd taught hand-to-hand combat in the Corps, or that shrapnel from a roadside blast outside Kandahar had ended her military career early, carving a scar down her right shoulder that still ached in cold weather. She didn't advertise that part. Didn't need to. Her husband hadn't made it through the transition. David had said all the right things, until the stillness, the money stress, the grief in her silences pushed him out. When he left, he didn't slam the door. He just didn't close it behind him. Nia didn't chase him. The divorce was finalized 6 months before she walked into Apex. Veterans at the clinic swore martial arts gave them something therapy couldn't, so she listened. Apex was sleek, expensive, full of high-end clients with sculpted gear, and no idea what violence actually looked like. Blake Thompson had clocked her from day one. Black, quiet, no bravado. She'd paid her fee, asked no favors, took the beginner slot, and stayed silent. But Blake hadn't just swept her legs. He'd stepped on a landmine. "You think you know better than me, Carter?" Blake's voice rang out sharp over the mats. "Maybe you should be teaching the class." He said it with a smirk, loud enough to entertain his audience. The room laughed along, students pretending it was just banter, not a warning. Nia didn't respond. She'd corrected her partner's grip during a drill, that's all. But she already knew what came next. The punishment wasn't for the correction, it was for forgetting her place. Blake had been waiting for this. The excuse? The moment. Today, during the advanced class she'd recently been permitted to join, he found it. He called her to the center of the mat under the guise of teaching a technique for countering larger opponents. What followed wasn't instruction. It was performance. A theatrical sweep. Excessive force. Her back hit the mat with a crack, knocking the air from her lungs. The class laughed again. Nia pressed her palm to the mat, tucked the dog tags under her GI, and stood. Her face didn't move. No flicker of anger. No need to feed the moment. "Thank you for the demonstration, sir," she said, bowing low and slow, exactly as protocol required. Blake turned to the class. "See? This is why real training matters. Some people just don't have it, no matter how hard they try." Everyone knew who some people meant. As Nia stepped back to join the line, Claire, young, blonde, and loud enough when she wanted to be, leaned toward another student. That's what happens when soccer moms try to play tough. Another wave of chuckles. Nia said nothing. She moved through the rest of class like a machine. Precise, silent, and unreadable. No glances, no questions, just motion. When it came time to spar, Blake skimmed the lineup and stopped at her. "Carter, sit this one out. Observe. Maybe you'll learn something." No explanation, no rotation, just exclusion, spoken like fact. She sat near the edge of the mats, folding her arms as she watched. Noted foot placement, tension points, breathing rhythms. If they were going to keep her sidelined, she'd study while they slept. After class, as students peeled off toward the locker rooms, Blake lingered. "The mats need cleaning," he said, tossing a spray bottle and rag at her feet. "You might as well make yourself useful." He didn't wait for a reply. Just walked off like the message had already landed. It wasn't the labor that stung. She'd cleaned barracks toilets with a busted wrist in Iraq. No. It was the smirk in his voice. The intention. She waited until the room was empty, then began. Her movements were calm, unbothered, like it didn't matter. But someone had been watching. From the office doorway, Maxwell Reed stood with arms crossed, the owner of Apex, late 50s, salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes, the kind of man who smiled without warmth. "Carter, right?" he called out. "Got a minute?" Nia set the bottle down and stepped inside. She didn't sit. Old instincts made her stand at ease by the door as he sank into his leather chair. "I've been watching your progress," he said. "Blake has concerns about your fit." She said nothing, just listened. "Apex maintains a certain standard. Our clients expect a high level of excellence. We're not a participation trophy gym." "I understand," Nia replied evenly. He leaned forward. "We offer a women-only class Tuesday mornings. Might be more comfortable." Respectfully, "I paid for advanced classes." His smile faded. "Well then, there's also an added training fee, $60 a month, for advanced students." Nia nodded. "Understood. Include it with next month's dues." He blinked. "And we'll need you to sign a waiver for promotional use, marketing rights." She scanned the clause, recognizing exactly what it meant. She signed anyway. Every move controlled, every breath measured. Whenever guests came through Apex, potential clients or parents, Blake made sure to use Nia as an example. "Some people just don't grasp the fundamentals," he'd say, smiling for the visitors. "No matter how much time they spend on the mat. Always loud enough for the class to hear. But hey," he'd add with a shrug, "we welcome all levels, even if they never progress." The message was always the same. She didn't belong. And the Whisper campaign didn't stay confined to the academy. It followed her. At a local open mat session hosted by a neighboring school, where practitioners from across Boston came to train together, she felt it the moment she walked in. "That's the girl from Apex," someone muttered. "The one who doesn't know when to quit." No one offered to drill with her. When she finally approached a partner, they glanced at the clock and said they had to leave early. At a coffee shop near Apex, she stood in line behind two fellow students. "Did you see that sad excuse for an armbar?" one said, unaware, or uncaring, that she was behind them. "Blake says she's proof some people should stick to yoga." They noticed her a moment later. One stiffened. The other lowered her eyes. Neither apologized. But the barista who'd caught the whole exchange slid her an extra espresso shot without charging her. "Don't let the meatheads get to you," she said softly, handing over the cup. A small kindness, in a season of erosion. The humiliation had started as physical. Now, it was viral. One of the videos from Blake's demonstration had surfaced online. How it leaked, she didn't know. but she saw the fallout. Her ex-husband David texted her, unsolicited. "This is why I couldn't stay. You never know when to quit. Always trying to prove something instead of knowing your limitations." She stared at the message for a full minute, then deleted it without replying. At work, the shift was subtle but sharp. One patient, an older businessman recovering from surgery, asked to be reassigned without explanation. She overheard the receptionist mention that video and how he didn't feel comfortable with someone who showed poor judgment. Even her landlord, who'd once made polite conversation, saw her stretching in the courtyard one night and muttered, "Keep that aggressive stuff inside. We've got kids in this building." And the money? That hit too. The extra Apex fees strained her budget. She picked up weekend shifts at the rehab center and cut out everything but rent, groceries, and transit. Still, she showed up to class. Same time, same uniform, same silence. Each humiliation was logged, not forgotten, filed deep beneath muscle and memory. What no one at Apex knew was that twice a week, Nia moved differently. At a community center gym in Dorchester, under the hum of flickering lights and the soft thud of real effort, she trained with Master Sergeant James Wilson. He had spotted her at the VA, recognized the posture before the name. They shared the same branch, the same scars. "You're wasted here," he'd told her after a session. "You should be teaching." She'd told him about Apex. He'd nodded. "Then come train for real. I've got a crew that knows what respect looks like." With Wilson's guidance, Nia advanced far beyond the white belt Apex forced her to wear. Her control, her flow, everything leveled up. Blake was still clumsy with transitions she now drilled in her sleep. "Sometimes," Wilson said during drills, "the most powerful weapon is being underestimated. But don't forget, there comes a time you stop hiding." That moment came faster than expected. The Boston Open Jiu-Jitsu tournament loomed, prestigious, regional, respected. Blake, of course, was competing. Black belt division. Apex Pride. Nia registered too. Women's blue belt division. Officially, Apex still had her ranked as white. But technicalities work both ways. Staff Sergeant Robert Carter had been a Marine long before his daughter. 20 years of service, then a quiet return to their small Pennsylvania town, where he taught high school history until cancer claimed him. He passed 2 years before Nia's injury overseas, never seeing how hard it had been for her to come back. Whenever life pressed in, she'd hear his voice. Focus on the mission, not the noise. Today, that was all she planned to do. She tucked his dog tags under her GI, zipped up her tournament duffel, and stepped into the morning chill. The Boston Open buzzed with bodies, fighters, coaches, spectators, referees. The Apex team had planned to meet in the lobby, but when Nia arrived, the message was clear. She wasn't part of the team. Blake was surrounded by his favorites, voice booming with last-minute strategy. No eye contact, no acknowledgement. When she stepped closer, Claire intercepted her with a smirk. "This area's for serious competitors," she said, looking Nia up and down. "Coach doesn't want distractions." Nia said nothing. She moved to a quiet corner and began her warm-up, mobility drills, breath control, internal stillness. The same habits the core had drilled into her long before anyone at Apex had learned to tie a belt. She watched from a distance. Blake lavished advice on the men. The women got passing nods. Performance still followed pecking order. Across the hall, she spotted Master Sergeant Wilson. He stood beside his crew from the community center, a calm force in a sea of chaos. He caught her eye and gave a small nod. That nod meant everything. The women's blue belt matches wouldn't start until afternoon. Nia had time. She watched the early rounds, quietly observing opponents' strategies, rhythms, weaknesses. Apex competitors held their own, advancing smoothly. Blake barked commands from the sideline like a cornered general. When Claire competed in the purple belt division, he was fully invested, shouting praise, throwing shade at refs. She won her first, lost her second, returned crying. "You were robbed," Blake told her, arm around her shoulder loud enough to turn heads. That takedown was textbook. And then it happened. A sudden voice on the PA. "Attention competitors in the men's black belt division." A medical withdrawal had opened a slot, The next eligible alternate was being called. Would Nia Carter please report to registration? The noise in the hall dulled. The Apex group froze. Blake's head snapped toward the announcer, then toward her. "What the hell is this?" he spat, storming toward the official's table. Nia calmly grabbed her bag and followed, keeping her distance as Blake unloaded his fury. "There's been a mistake. Nia Carter's a white belt. She's not qualified to compete, especially not in the black belt division." The tournament director didn't flinch. An older woman with decades of mat time behind her, she clicked through her computer. Ms. Carter registered under expert consideration. Credentials were submitted and validated by Master Sergeant James Wilson. She qualifies. Blake turned to Nia, his voice lower now, but his eyes wild. Credentials? What credentials? This is a setup. A deep voice cut in before Nia could answer. No setup, Thompson. Wilson stepped beside her, his arms folded calmly. She taught Marines how to fight before most of your students were out of high school. She's more than qualified. The reaction from the crowd was immediate. A ripple of realization. The calm, the skill, the scarred shoulder. It all clicked. Blake's face turned a shade darker. She's never shown black belt level technique at Apex. She was never asked to, Wilson replied. The director shut the conversation down. Mr. Thompson, either she fills the slot or we move to the next alternate. That's the rule. Blake exhaled hard. Fine. Let her humiliate herself. He turned to leave. Actually, the director added, glancing at the revised bracket. You're her first opponent. Blake stopped dead, turned slowly. That can't be right. But it was. And everyone around them knew it. By the time Nia stepped onto the mat, the crowd had doubled. They came for the drama. A fast humiliation or an unlikely upset. As Nia stepped onto the mat, a crowd had gathered. Apex students, rival gyms, curious spectators. Some were there to mock, others to witness. She peeled off her warm-up jacket, revealing lean, corded muscle wrapped in calm stillness. A quiet gasp rippled through the Apex group. Most had never seen her like this, only the quiet, invisible version in baggy gear and silence. Blake tried to keep his expression composed as they bowed to the referee. But the tension in his jaw betrayed him. The whistle blew. Blake charged immediately, aiming to overwhelm her. A heavy collar grip, aggression masked as control. Nia stayed grounded, defensive, reading him like she had read so many opponents in uniform. Then, in one clean shift, she dragged his sleeve, rotated her hips, and slid under, positioning for a tight arm guard with breathtaking precision. The crowd inhaled. Blake hadn't seen it coming. 14 seconds later, he was slapping the mat in submission, his face twisted in disbelief. The referee called it clean. Nia released the hold with discipline. 14 seconds, someone shouted, checking the timer. Blake scrambled up, red-faced, refusing the post-match handshake as he stormed off the mat, past his stunned team. Nia bowed to the referee, bowed to the judges, then stepped away with quiet pride. Master Sergeant Wilson met her at the edge of the mat. He extended his hand, gave her a rare smile. Clean execution, Carter, he said. Your father would have stood taller than me today. At the mention of her father, her eyes shimmered. She touched the dog tags under her GI and nodded. Thank you, sir. As she walked past the Apex team, most avoided her gaze. But Claire didn't. She stared. No longer smug, but unsettled. Something that looked like respect flickered behind her eyes. Nia didn't win the division that day. She lost in the semifinals to a world-class competitor with years more training. But it didn't matter. Her performance had already detonated something larger. Officials reviewed the match footage, especially the 14-second submission of Blake. What they saw raised questions that couldn't be ignored, not just about Blake's skills, but his leadership, his judgment. By the end of the day, clips of Nia's match were circulating online. The comments rolled in fast. This woman trained in silence and just smoked her coach. What kind of gym lets a fighter like that go unnoticed? Apex needs to answer for this. Tournament officials received formal complaints, not just from that day, but from students who had experienced Blake's toxic behavior for years. Maxwell Reed, always watching the brand more than the mats, reacted quickly. "We are conducting a thorough review," he told members in a bland Monday announcement. Apex remains committed to a respectful environment. Behind closed doors, he was livid, for all the wrong reasons. Membership inquiries were down. Cancellations were up. Blake was suspended, pending an investigation. The night Nia returned for class, the room was different, quieter. No laughter, no cold shoulders. People weren't sure how to look at her now. Maxwell pulled her aside before she reached the floor. "Miss Carter, may I speak with you?" In his office, he offered apologies wrapped in excuses. Then came the pivot. "We'd like to offer you a teaching position, women's self-defense. Your background would be a strong marketing point." Nia blinked slowly. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Reed, but I've accepted something else." It wasn't true. Yet. But the next day, she made it real. She resigned from Apex and requested a refund. Maxwell didn't argue. Weeks later, she launched her own trauma recovery program, martial arts and physical therapy combined, hosted at the VA clinic. By month's end, she had a wait list. Her first students, 2 female veterans, both dealing with PTSD. "You get it," one told her after class. "You're not just teaching moves, you're giving us control back." Meanwhile, Blake tried to discredit her, claimed she faked credentials. It backfired. An investigation revealed years of buried complaints, mostly from women. The pattern was undeniable. Blake's suspension became permanent. The governing body reviewed his black belt status. Though his rank wasn't stripped, the public reprimand shattered what remained of his credibility. His name no longer opened doors. A month after the tournament, Nia stopped into her usual cafe for coffee. The room went still when Blake walked in. He saw her at the counter, walked straight toward her, jaw tight, voice raised. "You made a fool of me," he said. "You hid who you were." Nia turned slowly, calm as ever. "I never lied," she said. "You just never asked." She paid and walked past him without waiting for a reply, ignoring the confrontation he clearly hoped for. They never spoke again. Word of Nia's story spread across Boston's martial arts community. Invitations began arriving, from academies who valued discipline over ego. Some were progressive, some just curious, but all of them recognized the depth of her experience. To Nia's surprise, Claire was the first from Apex to reach out. She came to one of Nia's veterans classes, nervous, small. "I came to apologize," she said, hands clasped. "The way I treated you. I was wrong." Nia nodded gently. "We all make judgments with partial information. Growth comes from being willing to revise them." Claire asked if she could volunteer. Nia agreed, with conditions. Respect the trauma in the room. Respect the silence. Respect the work. She did. And over time, Claire not only proved herself, she enrolled in a physical therapy program, inspired by the very woman she once mocked. Even Maxwell tried to make amends. He offered Nia a head instructor role at a new Apex branch. Full control, complete freedom. She declined, politely, but used the conversation to advocate for real policy changes, fair evaluations, trauma-informed instruction, equitable advancement. 6 months after the tournament, Nia's program had expanded to 3 locations. The VA supported her. Private grants funded equipment and space, and while she kept her rehab center job, she shifted to part-time to keep up with demand. Master Sergeant Wilson joined her twice a week, his technical sharpness balancing her calm presence. Together, they created a system that went beyond martial arts. It healed from the inside out. Nia wore her father's dog tags openly now, looped over her GI in every class. They had become her symbol, just like her signature move. The 14-second armbar, now affectionately dubbed the solution by her students. She never glorified it. "It's not the move that matters," she'd say. "It's the focus, the preparation, the moment you're ready before they know the match has begun." On the anniversary of her father's death, Nia traveled back to Pennsylvania. She laid a small stone on his headstone. Beside it, she placed a photo, her and her students, most of them veterans, standing shoulder to shoulder. "You were right, Dad," she said softly. "The mission matters, not the noise." As she turned to leave, an elderly man approached with a cane. "You're Robert Carter's daughter, aren't you? The one teaching in Boston?" "I am," she replied, watching him curiously. "I'm Richard Townsend. Your dad and I served in Beirut. He pulled me out of the rubble in '83. Saved my life." He looked off into memory, then back at her. "Never wanted attention. Just did the work. You've got that same energy." He'd be proud. Back in Boston, Nia focused not on the fighters with the biggest wallets, but those with the deepest wounds. Her name traveled further. Military branches, trauma centers, youth groups. They all called, asking her to help build something similar. The 14 seconds that changed everything were now just a footnote. New students sometimes asked about that match. She'd nod once, then say, "Back to stance. Respect, discipline, perseverance. That's what mattered." The dog tags that once slipped from her gi now stood as her emblem. Not just her father's legacy, but her own. Because real strength isn't always loud. It's built in silence, proved in pain, and revealed the moment someone finally sees you standing.